Right. So first things first, Billy, how are you?
I'm very well. Yeah, I'm tired. This is day before album, so it's that moment of evaluation. And
It's interesting. I didn't expect that word, evaluation. How come evaluation?
well, it's like each time this happens, it's still a surprise. Um, because this is the third time round now. And the day before is sort of you are doing deep analysis, which is something I do anyway. But over the past 2 years, which has been kind of concentrated into half an hour's work or 40 minutes. And it's just a bit, this is sort of a surreal day. It's like, the calm before the storm or whatever. Not that it's going to be a stormy day. I mean, nothing's going to change tomorrow, but the thing you've been working on will now be public.
Is it a sense of anxiousness then, or more joy and excitement?
Definite joy and excitement. Yeah. I'm trying to challenge those positive feelings because the past two times I haven't really. And I've kind of just made the day go away and somehow turned the whole thing into a negative experience, which is,
Why?
I don't know. I think I struggle with the tension of everything and the pressure and all of that stuff. But this time around, I'm genuinely there are no bad feelings, just, anticipation.
Oh, that's very good. Well, before we really delve into the record, I want to start with something else. What was the first thing you learned to play on bass?
What was the first thing? It was Belle and Sebastian.
Okay.
I can't remember which song. It goes do 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 do. Do you know that one?
No.
No. Well, it's I Want the World to Stop. That's what it is.
Because
Yeah, my bass player at the time, who was in the band before the world stopped, she recommended it was a good one to learn, so I went straight in with that.
because I can imagine when you decided. Now I read two accounts of are different. Is it true that you bought it drunkenly, the bass?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, first off, then, when you sobered up, what was your? Were you surprised that a bass showed up, and now you're committed to it?
It was surprising. It was one of those purchases where you can't really remember if you did it or not. And then this gigantic cardboard box came through the door and expensive cardboard box. And it was great. It was just like getting a new fun toy that you didn't know, how to work it. So I just experimented.
Yeah, has it kind of making this album now and learning how to play that instrument, has that given you new insights on your own musicality?
It's made me realize that I can expand, and I did really feel a lot of stunted growth with the guitar, because you generally have the same chords that you go round and round with, and the same lyrics come out of your face, and you lose that inspiration. And it's not necessarily that on a songwriting basis you've got nothing to speak about, but if you just change one element, everything becomes fresh and new. Even though you sound the same, and generally your songs are going to point towards a similar field. But it was so refreshing, and I loved starting each song with just bass and the drum beat, which couldn't be normal. I had to make it, I made Rich, my producer, just do some ridiculous things so it would be a bit more interesting.
But was this part, and I don't know if these two things coincided, but was it part of kind of your personal transformation in the past couple of years, as well as musical? Did they coincide, or did kind of one lead into the other?
I think maybe one led into the other. There was post second album is a weird time anyway. You're not really sure what's happening or who you are or anything. And I did have a lot of doubts within music. And then there was a massive switch up towards the end of the year, so pre-COVID. And I just changed everyone in my life basically to try and make a new formula. And, hopefully it worked. I think it worked.
you say you changed everything in your life. That must have been quite a decision. How did you
Yeah.
kind of arrive at that point?
I just became too too blue to function.
Mm.
It was just a bit of a rough couple of years, and through not treating myself very well and hanging around with the wrong people and doing all of those bad habits, I just lost a sense of self, but so massively that didn't feel like I could recover or change or evolve or anything. So these songs kind of pushed their way out as a way of saying, you know, you don't have to be that person forever, and you've kind of only just started. So don't pretend like it's the end already. And new sounds just had to come out from that time, and I'm grateful that they did.
Right, and then I suppose in those type of moments, kind of that first step of going in a different direction are the most difficult, but also the most important. What for you were those? Was it songwriting? Was it just taking better care of yourself? What got you moving in the right direction again?
I think just getting back in touch with Rich Cooper after maybe a 4-year gap. And we didn't really talk about it at the time, but we could both sort of sense that something needed to change. And we didn't set any parameters. There were no rules for songs that we were putting together. We didn't have a time limit. It was kind of just, any free afternoon we had, we'd go in and make something new, which was amazing. And I love writing like that sporadically and making sure you're doing the living as well as the creating. And there was no room for melancholy. I didn't feel like it was allowed in that room, because he's had the same studio for years and I know it really well, and it is like another home to me. So it doesn't necessarily mark the beginning of something new each time because it's so normal, but it really just felt like a change. And then from that, lockdown happened. I was up north with my parents and had 6 months to completely ignore the entire world, which was amazing. And through that time, just got new management, new label, knew everyone. And then came back down to London, recorded the record in 10 days or something. And it was done.
Okay.
That was the marker.
You mentioned having some doubts after the second album. What kind of doubts? Were they in terms of your career and where it was going, or what you wanted out of being in this music industry?
Yeah, because the first time around, as it is with everyone, it's just an experiment and you're being told lots of things by other people constantly, and you don't really have a chance to form your own opinion of whether you like it or not, and whether you're enjoying certain aspects. And especially because I was 17 the first time around, it was a lot harder to form an opinion. So, well, there was a mix of factors during the second album. Lots of the team was changed around. My main musical contact left Sony halfway through. And then I was left with this enormous pool of like corporate music people. And it was impossible to get my vision across, and they weren't interested in me and I wasn't interested in them. And it was just a bit of I just felt very deflated after that one came out, and I didn't have a lot of enthusiasm for myself. And performance-wise, I was getting kind of more and more insular and really not enjoying gigs and not enjoying people. And that's the stuff that I love normally. And sometimes, music is always peaks and troughs every single day, and I feel differently about it all the time. And some days it literally just knocks the wind out of you, and confidence flies out the window, and you're not really sure who you are. But then, you wake up the next day and it's back, and you're happy that you're doing the best job in the world, really. So yeah, it's been a lot of obviously formative years molding my view on music and life, and I just feel like I'm more of a person now, so I can explain myself a bit better.
What for you has been, because I can imagine during those difficult times there's something that keeps you going. So what for you musically has been the payoff in a way? Has it been the shows or playing live? Has it been the creative aspect of it? What and if we can go back to when you first started, but what really ignited that passion within you?
I'm just a big fan of music.
Okay.
I just love it, and there isn't a day goes by when I'm not listening to it, and I feel, and I know for me that it's the most important thing that I have. So it feels when I'm ever negative about it, or I mean, I'm never ungrateful, but sometimes I do forget the good things that are happening, like we all do.
Sure.
I have to remember that, this is what keeps me alive just as a fan. And my life wouldn't be the same without it, and all of the other things you can say about music. It's so important.
And what I find interesting, you just now earlier mentioned that one of the things you kind of had to reclaim or recapture is just doing some living. That there's work and there's kind of ambition and all that stuff, but you also have to just live your life in a way. And is it fair to say that Garden of Eden is that's kind of where that song originated?
Yeah, and I was very aware of other people's unliving, talking about their jobs, talking about what's happening in the future, constantly moving up and up and up. And in doing that, they're not actually growing. They're just, what's the word, posturizing or something? I can't remember. There's all talk and no action sometimes. And it's so easy to kind of lose 5 years doing that. And I was so aware of that, and literally just had this image of us all growing up and like elbowing each other and needing space and water. And we are just plants,
How useful was it for you to be up north then, to kind of detach yourself from that those hectic surroundings? Even during COVID, a big city is still a big city. So to kind of detach yourself from that, what was that like? And then what did you find as a way of living your life? Did you do a lot of reading? How did you kind of?
Well, at the very beginning, I was actually just supposed to go up for a weekend, and then I got stuck there. So I had 2 pairs of clothes the whole time and not many books, so I had to order them in.
Right.
I couldn't read, I couldn't watch anything. Everyone made the big film list, or they were going to learn all these covers or like start pottery or something like that. Couldn't do any of that because this problem was so worldwide and massive. I couldn't focus with people on the phone or anything. So I did a lot of walking, and it was so hot. So just lots of lying down outside whenever I could. Spent barely any time inside, which is so sad because this year it's still hailing.
Right.
I'm so attached to weather, unfortunately, in England, which means that just affects my mood instantly. And I do think it was a huge factor in, getting this album ready and done. It was the weather. Because it just makes me form such a positive opinion about things. And when my parents live in a small town, and it's very provincial and not a lot goes on there. So it's so easy to take everything slowly at an almost glacial pace. But every day you've done something you've achieved. Whereas living in London, I find that it's all about scheduling and filling each hour of the diary. And then at the end of the day, you feel like nothing's happened. And I don't know if that's just a city bias thing I have, because I do love London sometimes, and it can bring so many things. But most of this album is talking about that sheer competition, hating modernity, basically.
Is it also kind of the way, not just the music industry, because it happens in a lot of fields, I would argue, but so especially kind of the discourse about music, it's always about who's better. He's a better guitar player than he, and all that kind of nonsense. Did that start to affect you, especially with the rise of social media and everyone kind of throwing their 2 cents in?
Yeah, I hated it. It was so like, look at me, I'm okay.
Right.
yeah, I hate that sort of stuff. So I kept a very low profile. Unfortunately, I can't do that this week, but as soon as this album's over, I'll be gone again. um, but yeah, there's just what we're doing now is with social media and everything, we're categorizing everything, and it has to have its group and it has to have its peers and comparisons, which means that you're never just an individual anymore. Right. You're just part of the scene, and not in like a cool zeitgeist way, in like you have to be a someone or a someone else. And I hate that. It makes it very difficult to feel as though you can present something that's just you and kind of uninspired by other people, which is possible. You know, I just feel like we've lost that sense of individuality and mystique.
So how did you try to recapture that with Rich for this album? Because you mentioned going to the studio, going into that process. How did you try to recapture yourself in a way musically?
Well, it's so easy with him because, you know, we met before I was in the industry or, you know, doing that thing. And he is very much his own man. He's not really bothered about, you know, progressing or evolving or working with the hottest thing or like, you know, being big in the industry, which I love. And we can just lock ourselves away and make good things. And it's so much better than building a recording session up for 6 months with this huge producer, and it's so expensive and just unnecessary. Like if you make a good thing with someone, carry on doing it your own way. So it was freeing. What
were the first songs that rolled out?
Human Replacement was actually the first one.
Okay.
So it was like, okay, we're over here now.
Well, in doing my research, the story of Sarah Everard, I didn't know her story, but that was the first time I read. Was that one of the kind of things that inspired that song?
Unfortunately, well, the whole thing is so hideously sad, but Sarah Everard came out after I wrote the song, maybe a year after. But really unfortunate timing. But it was still very much a problem at the time. It was everything I was reading in the news was to do with that. But, you know, for selfish reasons, it was good to deflect the narrative from yourself for a bit. And I like doing that on this album because you can really get into self-analysis and, you know, so absorbing.
Well, because I do hear a lot from artists that songwriting can be a form of journaling and of getting thoughts onto paper and especially your own kind of experiences. So do you try to kind of, how would you say that? Do you try to make it a little bit more abstract so it's not just about you, but it can be connected to by lots of people? Yeah, I think I've always used a different narrative or a different pronoun, you know, he, she, whatever, when it's really just me. Right. It's a selfish thing, you know, songwriters are inherently selfish. we have to document and it has to be public. And would we make all this music if it wasn't, you know, if it wasn't public? I don't know. But I love documenting because it just puts a pin in history, your own history, and then you can move on. Does it help? Yeah, definitely. Because you feel like you've achieved whilst, you know, exhaling, getting things out. Definitely. And in particular with a song like Human Replacement, that being the first one, was that then kind of the foundation? Because it is there is some diversity on the album. It's not all the same song, but was that kind of the foundation? And did you notice the rest kind of forming around that song, or were they very separate in terms of their conception? I think there was a point where we were 2 or 3 in and we recognized that something was, you know, sounding similar, and the sentiment behind each song became as one. And we were really into the tempo changes that we've kind of mashed in the album. So by the time we got things like Garden of Eden and Creature of Mine, I think we were like, okay, cool, this is where this is going. But then, you know, like you said, it's cohesive to me because I know the narrative really well, and it was all recorded and written around the same time. Mm-hmm.
but we weren't setting ourselves particular boundaries. You know, we weren't going, we should make it sound like this album. And I think it's, you know, such a relief to be able to have the freedom to do that and not call anything by its category.
Right. Having gone through what you've gone through in the past year and the whole process of making this album, and now we're on the day before the release, how do you look back at that period where you were writing those songs? Yeah, let's keep it at that. I was trying to maybe be a little bit more specific, but let's keep it at that.
I look at it really fondly. I think it's a really good time of productivity for me. There hasn't been one since, so I'm still riding off the back of that. And it just really felt pivotal and like something was moving. And, you know, those glaciers were just shifting like an inch, but it creates this mass change in your life. And since writing that, everything personally and musically has kind of just gotten better for me. And, you know, I would say I'm a happy person.
That's very good to hear.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, then, do you have any expectations of this album, of kind of how people might perceive it, or what you might be able to do with it, all that kind of stuff?
I mean, I just, like everything, you know, everyone says, I just hope people like it, because I do. I really like it. I think it's good.
Well, to make it a little bit more specific then, because we are living in strange times at the moment still. I mean, the things are looking up, and I think we can be tentatively positive, but it's still a strange world at the moment, very uncertain. So releasing an album when you don't even know when you can perform the songs live, that must be a strange feeling. So what are your thoughts on the next step for you then?
Well, we've got the calendar's really filling up from July, weirdly, and then I think I finish in like November, which is just a mad concept, and I don't know how the hell my body's going to be able to do that amount of work. But this album was made for live. You know, that was our rule. So the moment I can do that, I think that will be a really big moment for me, because each time I've dreaded the live aspect of making something so insular and small and quiet, and I've deliberately made songs that are impossible for me to project. And this one is the antithesis of that. So it's not really, you know, people ask me like, how should they listen to this album? And lots of people go outside and lie down and listen to it. And I'm thinking it's more of a traveling album, you know, moving around and reflecting, and then also just hearing it live, which would be amazing, just to see some faces, like get a real reaction. Because tweets aren't real. They're not.
Sure.
They're not. Everything's fabricated right now.
Yeah, I have a similar thing where most of the information that we get now is through a screen, and that's a bit disconcerting, I would say. Final question then, because in terms of where the sound has developed to, was that always the idea of having that fuller sound and a more, like you say, more emphasis on the live show and doing it together, not just you by yourself and a guitar, but to create that band type of atmosphere? Yeah,
definitely. We wanted to. Unfortunately, we couldn't actually do this at the time because it was still lockdown, but I was supposed to play with live band, and me and Rich just ended up doing it, and gradually friends came in to just, you know, put small line on top or add their thing. But yeah, I definitely wanted the feeling of warmth and humans playing in the room together. And I feel like that side of the album is probably yet to come. Because, you know, it's just me and him adding and adding and adding and reamping and reamping and reamping.
So you have until July to figure that part out, right?
Yeah. I mean, it really needs some practice, because literally haven't played them since we recorded. So there you go.
All right. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to talk with me, and I wish you all the best with that process, and I hope you get to play live soon.
Thank you. I can't wait. Can't wait.